There is a seat on the women's side that no one would look at. I looked. I was the bride, and I was supposed to be looking at my hands, at the floor, at the man I was about to marry. But my eyes kept going back to that bench. The wood was worn smooth from years of Sundays. The gap where my sister should have been sat like a held breath. Somebody had left a hymn book there, open, as if she might still come. I could smell the celery cooking in the back kitchen. I could hear my own heart, and I did not yet know that the man beside me already knew exactly why she was gone. My name is Elsbeth. I grew up in a small Swartzentruber-rooted settlement out past the river in Ashland County, in a house where the windows had no screens, and the clock was always 10 minutes slow. I was 20 when I married. This channel is where I tell the things we were taught to swallow. Quietly, honestly, one story at a time. If you have ever sat in a room full of people who loved you and felt certain they were keeping something from you, then you already understand this story better than I did that morning. Stay with me and subscribe, not to join anything, but because you belong here among people who know that feeling. Tell me in the comments about a time you were the last to know. I read every one. Now let me take you back to that bench. The morning of my wedding smelled like celery. That is what I remember first. The women had been cooking since before light great pots of it for the rosht, and the smell crept through the whole house and into my hair, and into the blue dress they had sewn for me. I sat very still while my mother pinned my cape. Her fingers were quick and cold. I wanted her to say something ordinary, something about the weather, or the food, but she only pinned and smoothed and pinned. Outside, buggies were already turning into the lane, one after another, wheels crunching the gravel. It should have been the happiest sound I knew. My sister's name was Verena, and she was 2 years older than me, and we had shared a bed until I was 15. When we were small, we had a game we played in the dark, tapping the wall between our thoughts. 1 tap for yes, 2 for no, a whole language of knuckles on plaster. She taught me to braid. She taught me which of the older women to fear and which to trust. On the morning I married, the one thing I was certain of was that she would be there, on the front bench of the women's side, watching me the way she had watched me learn everything. I had asked her to. She had promised. But when I whispered her name to my mother, asking if she had come yet, my mother's face did a small thing I had never seen it do. It tightened. Not sadness, not surprise, something closer to a door being pulled shut. She said Verena was not feeling well, and she said it too fast, and she went back to the pinning as though the words had not left her mouth. I let it go. A bride does not argue on her wedding morning. But the answer sat wrong in me, the way a stair sits wrong, when you count wrong in the dark, and your foot finds air. The service was held in the Yoder's barn, swept clean, the benches carried in and set in long rows, men on one side, women on the other. I walked in beside Aaron with my eyes down as I had been taught, but a bride steals looks, and I stole mine at the women's benches. Front row, the place my sister should have been, empty. Someone had set an open hymn book there, spine cracked wide, and no one sat near it, and no one moved it, and the women on either side had turned their bodies just slightly away from that gap, as though it might be catching. I found Aaron's face then, because I did not know where else to put my fear. Aaron was a good man. Everyone said so. Steady and slow to anger. A man who kept his fences mended. When I asked him, under my breath, if he had heard anything of Verena, he did not answer the way a person answers a small question. He looked at the floor of the barn, at the swept boards, and he said no, he had not, and his ears went red at the tops. I had known that man since we were children. I had never once seen him lie. That morning I watched him do it, and I did not understand what I was seeing. The bishop began to speak. His voice filled the barn the way it always did, low and certain, and the congregation settled into the old stillness. I heard the words about submission, and the words about two becoming one, and the words about the will of God for a woman's life. I heard them, but I was not inside them. I was on that empty bench. I kept thinking she would slip in late, breathless, that the barn door would swing and there she would be, and I would be able to breathe again. The door did not swing. The hymn book lay open to a page no one turned. I want to tell you that I felt only love that day. I want to give you the wedding a woman is supposed to remember. But the truth is that something underneath the joy had begun to hum, low, like a wasp inside a wall, and I could not find the crack it was coming through. I made my vows. I meant them. I promised before God and the whole district to keep and to help and to submit, and my voice did not shake. But my eyes kept crossing the room to that gap on the bench, and every time they did, the humming got louder, and no one, not one single person in that barn, would look at it with me. When it was done, when we were married, Aaron reached over and took my hand the way a husband takes a hand. His palm was warm and dry and familiar, and then he squeezed it, not gently. He squeezed it once, hard, the way you grip someone's arm before you tell them bad news, the way you hold a person steady before the ground moves under them. He was looking straight ahead at the bishop, his jaw set. He did not look at me, but I felt that squeeze travel all the way up my arm and into the humming place, and for the first time all morning a clear thought came through the noise, cold and complete. He knows something, and he is bracing me for it. The wedding meal was held in the same barn. The benches turned into tables, and the whole district sat down to eat the rosht and the mashed potatoes, and the celery that had scented my whole morning. I sat at the corner table, the ek, where the bride and groom always sit, raised a little above the rest so everyone can see the new couple and be glad. Everyone could see me. That was the trouble. I sat in the one place in the room where I could not go looking, could not slip along the walls and ask my quiet questions. And so I sat, and I smiled, and I passed the dishes, and inside me the wasp went on humming in the wall. I watched the room instead. I had learned young how to watch a room without seeming to, and what I saw was a kind of carefulness moving through the women. A thing passed hand to hand like a hot dish. When Verena's name might have come up, it did not. When someone began to speak of her and caught themselves, they turned it into something else. The weather, the food, the length of the sermon. It was so smooth I might have missed it a year before. But grief teaches you to see the shape of a thing by the space it leaves. And everywhere I looked that day, I saw the shape of my sister in the space no one would fill. Her closest friend was Katie Miller, who had stood up with us both since childhood. When the meal thinned, and the women rose to clear, I found my chance, and I found Katie by the wash tubs, her sleeves pushed up, her hands in the gray water. I asked her, plain, if she had seen Verena. I watched the color go out of her face. It went the way milk goes when you pour it into hot coffee, all at once, from the top down. She said she had to help her mother, and she dried her hands on her apron though they were still wet, and she was gone before I could say another word. Wet hands. She had dried wet hands to get away from me. After that I stopped waiting for the truth to come to me, and I went to find it. I asked my Aunt Fanny, softly, where Verena had gone. She said Verena was away, visiting relatives up in Michigan, and she patted my arm and called me a beautiful bride. 10 minutes later I asked my Uncle Eli the same thing, and he said Verena had taken ill, poor girl, and was resting at home and could not travel. Away visiting, resting at home. 2 answers, both delivered kindly, both certain, and they did not fit each other at all. I stood between them and felt the floor of the barn tilt. I noticed something else then, and once I noticed it I could not stop hearing it. No one used the word. In our world there is a word for what happens when a person leaves, when a person is set outside the fellowship, when the district agrees to turn its face away. I will not pretend the word does not exist, but no one said it. Not my mother, not Katie, not Fanny, not Eli. They said away and unwell, and not herself. The word that should have been there was missing from every sentence, and its absence was louder than if someone had shouted it across the barn. You learn a great deal from the words people are careful not to say. I began, without deciding to remember. The weeks before the wedding came back to me in pieces I had not thought to keep. Verena, sitting on the edge of my bed one night, starting a sentence about me and Aaron, and how a marriage could hold a person, and then stopping, folding her hands, saying never mind, it was nothing. Verena, packing a small bag and telling me it was for a quilting up north. Verena, holding my face between her hands the last time I saw her, and looking at me too long, as if she were trying to memorize something, as if she already knew she was saying goodbye, and could not tell me she was. The men had gone out to see to the horses, and I stepped toward the wide barn door for air, and that is when I heard them. Aaron and my father, just outside, their voices low the way men's voices go low when they are deciding something. I could not catch the words, only the weight of them, the seriousness. And then my father said my name, said Elsbeth, and said something after it I could not hear, and Aaron answered him short and quiet. I took one more step and the gravel gave me away, and both of them stopped talking at once, the way a clock stops, and turned, and put ordinary faces on for me. My own husband, my own father, wearing ordinary faces for me on my wedding day. It was then, standing in the barn door with the horse smell and the cooling air, and my whole family arranged around a thing they would not name, that a hard thing settled in me. Aaron had known Verena's married name. That was the piece I had not let myself hold until then. When I had spoken of her that morning, he had not asked married to whom, had not asked when, had not stumbled the way a man stumbles over news he has never heard. He had known she was married and gone is not away and not unwell, and there was only one way he could have known it. She had told him herself. I looked across the yard at my new husband, and he was already looking at me, and I understood that he had been waiting all day, through the vows and the meal and the celery and the singing, for the moment I would finally ask him the real question. I decided I would not sleep that night until he answered it. We rode home in the dark. In our district, the new couple does not go off alone the way the English do, but there is a stretch, a small hour, when the guests have scattered to their buggies, and the work of the day is done, and it is only the two of you, and the horse, and the road. Aaron drove. I sat beside him with my hands in my lap, still in my blue dress, and the lantern swung on its hook and threw the hedgerows up yellow, and let them fall back into black. Neither of us spoke. The wheels found every rut. I waited, because I had learned that a silence held long enough will crack the one who is hiding in it, and it was Aaron who broke. He said he had to tell me something, and that he should have told me before, and that he had prayed all day he would not have to. His voice was not steady. This was a man I had never heard falter, and he faltered now, and somehow that frightened me more than any of it. He pulled the horse up in the middle of the empty road and set the brake and turned to me, and in the swinging light I watched him gather the thing he had been carrying since before he put the ring of promise on our future. He said Verena had come to him 3 weeks before the wedding. She had come to him, not to me. I made him say it again, because the words went in, but would not settle. Verena had left. She had not been sent away, had not been set outside, had not been taken ill. She had chosen it. She had packed her small bag not for a quilting, but for a life beyond the fences, and she had gone, on her own 2 feet, out into the world we had been taught to fear since before we could walk. My sister, who taught me to braid, who tapped yes and no through the wall in the dark, had decided the world was worth the losing of us. That was the first thing, and it was already more than I could hold, and Aaron was not finished. The second thing was worse, and it was also, somehow, the most tender thing anyone had ever done for me. Verena had gone to Aaron before she left because she was afraid for me. She told him she could not stay and watch me marry into the same silence that had closed over her, could not sit on that front bench and bless a life she believed would shrink me down to nothing. So she had gone to the one man who would soon have power over my days, and she had asked him, begged him, to be different, to let me keep my voice, to not let our marriage become the thing that emptied me. She had spent her last hours in the district not saying goodbye to me but pleading for me to a man I had not yet married. And the third thing was the one that broke me. Aaron told me that after Verena left, the elders had learned she had spoken to him, and my father had come to him, and together they had asked one thing of him. They asked him to keep it from me until the vows were said. They were afraid that if I knew, on the morning of my wedding, that my sister had run and had gone to my groom to save me from my own marriage, I would not go through with it. So, they asked him to hold his tongue through the service, through the meal, through the singing, through every moment I sat on that eck and searched the empty bench. And Aaron, my good and steady Aaron, my mended fence man, had said yes to them. I want to be careful here, because it would be easy to make him a villain, and he was not one. He was a man who had been raised, exactly as I had been, to believe that the order of things was love, that obedience to the fathers was obedience to God, that a woman was better kept from a truth that might unsteady her. He did not lie to me to hurt me. He lied to me because everyone he had ever trusted had told him it was the kind thing, the right thing, the godly thing. But I sat in that buggy in my wedding dress, and I understood that on the first day of our life together, when it came down to the elder's wishes or his wife's right to know, he had chosen them. He had chosen the code, and he had chosen it over me. The dress felt suddenly enormous on me, all that blue fabric, all those pins. a costume I had been dressed in for a play whose ending had been decided by other people before I ever walked in. The ring of the vow was not on my finger. We do not wear rings. But I felt the weight of the promise on me like a band all the same, and it felt like something fastened by strangers. I looked at my hands in the lantern light. I had said I would submit. I had said it in front of God and everyone I loved, and every one of them had known, and I had been the only one in that barn saying my vows blind. Then Aaron reached into his coat. I thought, in the dark, that he was reaching for my hand again, and I do not know what I would have done if he had. But it was not my hand he wanted. He drew out an envelope, folded once, soft at the corners from being carried against his chest all day, through the vows, through the meal, through every hour he had said no to me with his silence. He held it out. He said Verena had left it for me. She had made him promise I would have it, no matter what else he was asked to keep back. My name was on the front in her hand, in the careful letters she had taught me to make. I took it, and I was afraid, more afraid than I had been all day, of what my own sister had needed me to know. I did not open it in the buggy. I could not with him beside me, not with the lantern swinging and his eyes on the side of my face. I waited until we reached the house. Our house now. The small dowdy place his family had given us to start our life. And I lit a candle, and I went into the one room that had a door, and I shut it. I sat on the edge of a bed I had never slept in a house that did not yet know me, and I unfolded the paper my sister had folded with her own hands. The candle shook. My hands shook. Outside the window, the whole dark countryside held its breath with me. She had not written much. Verena was never one for many words, and there were only a few lines, but I have carried every one of them since. She wrote that she was sorry she could not stand beside me. She wrote that leaving me was the hardest thing she had ever done, and that she had done it anyway, and that she needed me to understand it was not a leaving of me, but a leaving of a life that had begun to make her disappear. And then she wrote the line I read so many times that night, the candle burned down to nothing. She wrote, "Do not let them talk you out of your own knowing. Guard your yes and your no. They are the only things that are truly yours." I sat with that a long time. Guard your yes and your no. I had given my yes that very day, in front of the whole district, and I had given it without a single one of the facts a person needs to give a true yes. They had let me marry blind and called it kindness, and I understood then, sitting in that borrowed room, that my sister had seen the whole of it coming. She had seen the way our world managed a woman, not with cruelty most of the time, but with a soft and constant hand over the mouth, a gentle steering, a deciding for her that everyone agreed was love. She had run from it, and with her last hours inside the fences, she had tried to leave me a door. When I came out of that room, Aaron was still sitting at the table where I had left him, his hands folded, waiting. I did not scream at him. I want you to know that, because I think you might expect it, and I think part of me expected it too. But quiet devastation does not scream. It sits down across the table and it looks. I told him I had read it. I told him what she asked of me. And I asked him the only question that mattered, which was not why did you lie, but this. When it came down to the fathers or to me, you chose them. What will you choose the next time? And to his credit, and it took me years to be able to say those words, to his credit, he did not have a ready answer. I have thought a great deal. in the time since, about where the wound really was. For a long while I believed it was the secret itself, the lie he carried up to the altar. But that was not the deepest cut, and I know that now. The deepest cut was the reason they gave for it. They kept the truth from me because they did not believe I could carry it. My mother, my father, the elders, even Aaron, they had looked at me on my wedding morning and decided I was too small a vessel for my own life, that I had to be steered around the truth the way you steer a horse around a fright. It was not the hiding that unmade me, it was the certainty, in all of them, that I could not be trusted with what was mine. I did not run that night. I want to be honest with you about that, because so many stories end with the barn door swinging open and a woman disappearing down the road, and mine did not. Not that night, and not for a long while. What I did was smaller. In the morning I moved the hymn book. I had gone back to the Yoder's barn to help the women carry the benches out, and the open hymn book was still there on the empty bench, where someone had set it as a stand-in for my sister, and every woman there was still turning her body away from it. I picked it up. I closed it. I held it against my chest in front of all of them. It was the first thing in my life I had ever refused to pretend not to see. That small act cost me more than a larger one might have, because the women watched and word traveled, and for a season, I was a person who had made things uncomfortable. But something had shifted in me that could not shift back. I began to keep my own knowing the way Verena told me to. I began to notice when I was being steered, and, quietly at first, to set my feet. I asked the questions I would once have swallowed. I said my small no's and my true yeses. Aaron and I are still married, if you are wondering, and it has not been simple, and I will not sell you a tidy ending. But he learned, slowly, that his wife would not be managed. And I learned that a marriage can either hold you or hollow you, and that the difference lives entirely in whether you are allowed to know your own life. So I will leave you with the thing my sister left me, because it was never only for me. If you are sitting somewhere right now and you feel that low hum in the wall, that certainty that the people who love you are keeping your own life from you for your own good, I want you to hear this plainly. Being protected and being silenced can wear the very same face. They can smell like celery, and sound like a kind voice, and feel like a hand squeezing yours before the ground moves. But you are not too small a vessel for the truth of your own life. You never were. You are allowed to know, and your yes and your no, quiet as they are, belong to no one on this earth but you.